Hello, everyone, and welcome to the MAD podcast. This is the place where entrepreneurs share their case studies of mergers, acquisitions, and deals. And the successful entrepreneurs in this video series will explain how they source, structure, and close deals. Now, today's episode is with Della Kirkman. Della is from Indiana in the United States, and her background is accountancy and hospitality. And in this episode, she explains how she acquires a pizza restaurant and essentially turns it around. So I hope you enjoy our first retail case study. And don't forget to subscribe below, hit that notifications bell. You'll get the latest videos in the series as they are released. And I hope you enjoy this episode. Okay, welcome to the MAD podcast. And today I'm absolutely delighted to say that my guest is Della Kirkman. Hello, Della.
Hi, Sean. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. And I'm really pleased you're on the podcast today. Thank you for joining us. And so, Della, can I ask you to kind of introduce yourself and just share with us a little bit about your background, please?
Sure. Well, thank you for having me today, Sean. I'm pretty excited about it, and I appreciate the opportunity. So my background is a little bit varied. I did put myself through college waiting tables. I graduated with a double major in finance and economics, so I kind of naturally worked in the financial investment sector for a while after college. I've sold mortgages, I've sold real estate. At one point in time, I supported myself and my daughter by owning 14 residential units. Went back to restaurants and managed restaurants and waited tables again. And then probably in my late 30s, as my kids were at a point where they're going to be in school all day long, I thought it was time to kind of go back to my degree and go back to the business world. And when I looked through all the jobs that were available, all the cool and interesting jobs required either an MBA or a CPA. And I thought, well, I don't have an MBA, and I think a CPA is just taking a test, and I'm a good test taker. So I thought to myself, well, I'll just go take a test and become a CPA, which it wasn't quite that simple, but that is essentially what I did. And in the meantime, I contacted everybody in my email addresses and said, hey, I'm going to be an accountant now, and if you know of anybody that needs some help, let me know because I need to get some experience. And my great aunt sent me to a local firm in a little tiny town outside of my hometown of Fort Wayne. And I got hired. I told the gentleman, if you ever want to sell, I'd buy. And within a very short period of time, I bought the firm with a partner. And then we ended up growing that and restructuring a little bit. And I ended up selling that. In the meantime, my boyfriend bought a pizza and bar place. This is one of the other things we're going to talk about today. And we ended up fixing that up, buying the entire city block, and now we have that whole block near a thriving downtown area listed for sale. And this is the town that Sweetwater Sound originated in. If you're into music, or Vera Bradley is from Fort Wayne, if you're into the purse and maybe pocketbook scene. But now I'm focusing on investing and buying and selling businesses. And I just really want to continue helping businesses, but in a more meaningful way than I could by doing taxes and bookkeeping at the CPA firm.
Okay, brilliant. And just, you mentioned it then actually, but a lot of my, or some of my English listeners may not know what a CPA is, but what you're saying is an accountant.
Right. So I think you guys refer to it as a chartered accountant.
Yeah, that's
and we're certified public accountants is what our designation is here in the States.
Okay, thanks for qualifying that.
Sure.
So yeah, you mentioned a couple of case studies we're going to look at, and one is that you went into essentially a bar and pizza business. So can you tell us how did that come about?
Sure. Well, it's an iconic neighborhood bar. It's called the Redwood Inn. It started to be called the Redwood Inn in the 60s, but it had been a bar since the very late 1800s. And we actually have some black and white photographs with the horses tied up out front. And so, but it's just always been there. It's always been kind of an iconic spot in the neighborhood. My boyfriend grew up in that neighborhood. And over the years, bars can be hard to run and kind of wear you down and tire you out a little bit. And that's where this particular owner was. I think she had had it for about 20 years, part of that time with her husband, and then her husband passed, and she continued to run it on her own. But we had our eye on that particular location for a while. We ended up buying the building that it was in because that was owned by a different individual. So we bought the building first and then approached the owner and said, hey, if you're interested in selling, we're interested in buying. And she wasn't interested at that point in time. Later on, a few years down the road, she did end up listing it with a broker, but couldn't find anyone to buy it because we weren't willing to sell the real estate. And no one wanted to buy it without the real estate. And so she came back to us and said, okay, you've already got the real estate. I might as well, sell you the business after all. So we did buy that on contract. So it's really kind of my boyfriend's big into the real estate side. So the bar story kind of has a real estate side to it and a business side to it. So on the real estate side, we bought that bar. It was a really old, rundown building. It still had, and we left it, it still had, it's called the Redwood Inn. So it still had the red carpet that had been there for 40 years and the same red booths that had been there for 40 years. And people come in that hadn't been in there in a long time, like, oh my God, it looks kind of exactly the same as it did, when I was a kid and things like that. And that's one of the things that we really wanted to keep with that. But some of the changes we made included the real estate changes. So we actually bought 5 buildings that were next to the Redwood, and we tore all those down. And it was a little bit of a process, but we initially added a concrete, what we wanted to be a patio, but also we were going to enclose it with, the garage style doors that could go up and down depending on the weather and what was going on, because we do get fairly brutal winters here. But that was kind of interesting because when you enclose a commercial building in the States, it's over, I think, 300 or 500 square feet. Homeland Security has to get involved. And so that's a very lengthy process. So we skipped that and just stuck with the patio. Ended up adding on a second patio level. So we really had the one of the biggest and nicest patios for outdoor dining in the area. And that was a big draw, and it really brought new people back to the Redwood, and people that had been there, historically. It was all the buzz. So everybody was coming back to see what was going on. And that has its own challenges. When we went to pour that concrete, we get building permits all the time, but the county had missed a signature on one. And so they came down as we were actually pouring the concrete and gave us a stop work order. And what we had to do to fix that was literally buy an engineer's signature over the phone. We never met with a guy, never hired him to do anything except for sign this paper for the city. So, that's one of the things that, the new people may not always consider, that there's a lot of hoops to jump through and a lot of regulations and a lot of other people to please as they're, building their businesses.
Yeah, I love the idea that you bought the real estate, and then the business came second. That's a smart move, isn't it? When you bought the real estate, were you hoping you get the business at some point? Was that in your mind when you went in there?
Yeah, we were hoping to get the business, but if nothing else, it was just another piece to add to our portfolio of real estate. It's on a corner with a stoplight on the main drag that goes through downtown. So we're a few blocks outside of what would be considered the heart of downtown, but still a main drag to get from one side to the other. And like I said, it's a corner with a stoplight. And then we ended up also buying a 15,000 square foot warehouse on that same block. So now we own that whole city block there, and we have that listed for sale. So that could be a good opportunity for someone, or, could end up being another opportunity for us as well. But yeah, we're definitely into the real estate side of things.
Yeah. I love real estate. I think it's just great. So, what happened? So you bought the bar. What one needed? You've done some refurbishment on it. What else is it? You prepared it for selling, didn't you?
We did. It was never something that we meant to keep. We just wanted to kind of bring it back to life because it was this iconic neighborhood establishment that we had always enjoyed going to, and we knew still had a lot of potential in it. It just needed kind of a breath of fresh air, so to speak. So when we took it over, the books were a mess. We couldn't tell, what was really going on. Maybe everything was being reported, maybe it wasn't. we drive by on the weekends. The parking lot was maybe half full at best when it should have been, overflowing. But it was really famous for the sausage roll. So I know I've been on your side of the pond, and they have something. You guys have something you call a sausage roll, but it's
sausage rolls in the UK, I have to say, Della.
yes. But our sausage roll is much larger and much different from yours. So it's really kind of like a pizza rolled up into kind of a football type of shape.
Oh wow.
But anyhow, so we're pretty famous for the sausage roll. So we had something, to base it off of. We had the great sausage rolls and then the neighborhood establishment. And so what we really did is we bought the place. It had been traditionally closed on Sundays and Mondays. So we bought the place, filled all the paperwork out on Monday, opened up Tuesday morning, right off the bat. The previous owner came in and, showed us how to make the soups. And so we could jot down those recipes, and showed me how to run the monthly report on the cash register. And of course, at the end of the day, I'm like, okay, what about the daily report? So I had to call her back and figure out how to run the daily report. There's a couple funny stories with my young daughter. We were in and out that day and setting the alarm, and I had left the code inside the building, and my daughter and I said, we can't get back in. I don't have the code. And she's like, oh, well, I have it written down in my notebook, Mom. And, the notebook is right here. So that was kind of fun. And she was only 10 or 11 years old at the time. And so we let her skip school that first day, and she came in and helped with the soups. And like I said, kept track of the security code, and went back to school the next day. And her teacher says, oh, well, Lacey, I hope you're feeling better today. She's like, well, what? I'm not sick. She's like, well, why weren't you at school? She's like, oh, my mom bought a bar. So surely, you're not working there. It's like, so that was kind of another funny story. But, basically we just walked in and we cleaned things up a little bit, and we put some systems in place. We advertised that we had new owners, a new management. We added a decent amount of meat back to some of the sandwiches because that had gotten, kind of skimpy over the years. People would come in and say, oh my gosh, you remodeled the men's restroom. Like, no, my mother's a cleaner. I said, no, my mother just spent an entire day cleaning the men's bathroom. And they would say, oh, you've added, so many new lights in. I'm like, no, my mother got on a ladder and she cleaned, the covers of all the lights. Yeah. So in some respects, that's all it really needed was just another, little bit of love and tender care. And a little bit more customer service. There was one particular table that I took care of in the beginning. And, we're a made from scratch kind of pizza place. This isn't a conveyor belt where you throw, a frozen crust through and a pizza comes out a couple seconds later. The dough's made from scratch. Excuse me, the sauce is made from scratch. And so I was talking to a table as they were waiting for their food, and they said, we like the food here, but we only come here a few times a year because we just don't get any customer service. And they said, we don't even have our food yet, and you've already talked to us more in this visit than probably our last 4 visits combined. So really, just needed that TLC, that customer service, clean it up a little bit. People would come in, and as soon as they walk in the door, we're like, welcome to the Redwood Inn. And so we just, bring a friend or make one when you can get here. So we just kind of brought that friendly, neighborhood atmosphere back into it.
Oh,
like I said,
what you did, Della, is, and this reminds me of the conversation we had previously, because we talked about a program on America called Bar Rescue.
Oh, yeah.
With John Taffer.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I found this just recently, and I've been watching lots of episodes, but he basically does what you did, which is you find a bar and you turn it around
exactly
as quickly as possible and make it profitable. And if anyone's listening to this and you want to know how to do that, you can. You've heard how Della does it, but you can watch Bar Rescue on Amazon Prime. It is.
Yeah, and he's a beast. He's great.
He is really great. Yeah, he's very entertaining, and he doesn't take any BS, and he gets the job done. So it sounds like you turned around this business. You made it profitable. You looked at every aspect: the cleaning, the customer service thing. So how did you sell it? Who did you sell it to?
Well, we had to add in a lot of systems too that weren't in place. So those things that I mentioned previously were kind of the front side of it, what everybody could see as they walked in the door. But when we first got there, I saw a cooler full of beers, but I had no idea where they came from. So I made a list of all the beers, and I called the first supplier and said, hey, I know what beers I have, but I don't know which ones I get from you. Do you mind if I list them off and you tell me? So, we made it more of a turnkey operation. There was no inventory system, so I designed an 11-page spreadsheet with all the inventory items, broken out by vendor, and I set par levels so we knew, how much we needed to have on hand going into every week. And so what we ended up doing is selling it to a former server. And, bars and restaurants aren't necessarily the easiest to get financing on. They're not necessarily the easiest, to find buyers for. So we did have a former server. Her and her boyfriend were interested in buying it, but they didn't really have the funds for that. So they had another company that he was running doing fencing work. And so we found a good fencing job for them to do, with the understanding that the money from that fencing job would be the down payment on the bar. And so now we're selling that to them on contract terms as well. Though we kept the real estate for ourselves, that's not part of their deal. And the liquor license is also not part of their deal. So they'll be renting those two things from us forever, theoretically.
Okay, sounds good. So you still got a vested interest in their own success, really.
Yep, definitely.
Yeah. Okay, so you went from bar pizza business opportunity to an accountancy business. Is that right? This is your second.
Yeah. So they actually overlapped each other. So there were plenty of days where I would sit in the office and do taxes and bookkeeping during the day, and then I'd head over to the bar at night and, help with inventory, wait tables, run food, kind of whatever it takes. So yeah, they did overlap. At the CPA firm, that was a lot of fun as well.
So how did you find it, Della? How did it come about?
Yeah, so I was looking for an accounting job, even just an internship or anything to start to learn the ropes. And my aunt sent me to a local CPA firm, just a one-guy shop with probably 3 or 4 staff at that point in time. And he hired me just to do drop-off tax returns. So, I think tax system's a little bit different over here than it is there, but it's very deadline-oriented here, and we're really in the middle of tax season right now. But many individuals will just drop their tax documents off at an office, have them prepared, and then they'll come back to pick them up or e-file or whatever later. And so I was hired just to do drop-offs during that first tax season, so there wasn't supposed to be any client interaction or anything. But the gentleman fell and broke his hip into like 1 million pieces that first tax season. And so I got much more involved. And, I ended up buying it from him with another gentleman just a short period of time after that. The business partner, my business partner and I, again, we just brought the customer service back in, got some more formal systems in place. Excuse me. Because the gentleman that we purchased it from, so this is how I sum it up. He did not have a cell phone, and the gentleman I bought it with, they still don't have cell phones. So that's kind of the atmosphere. This was only like 8 years ago. So there was a lot of room for improvement with technology. The gentleman that we bought it from had a lot of health issues, and so he just wasn't quite as able to keep up with the work as he had been in the past. Brilliant accountant, super duper guy, but just had too many health issues. And so we came in and, like I said, added in some technology, added in a website, a portal for people to send their documents back and forth. We did buy it from him over time payments based on the retention of clients. And I think we were pretty generous. We also paid him based on referrals that came from his clients. So every month when I wrote him a check, he was always happy at how large the check was because, he did very well for us and stayed on as kind of our mascot and did tax returns as well for a couple of years. Then it got to the point where I was ready to kind of take it on my own. So I did buy my business partner out. And then a few years later, it just got to be the point where it's big enough that it would be attractive for someone else to buy. And I wanted to move on in a fashion that I could be more helpful to business owners than just sitting there doing their taxes and, bookkeeping in a historical fashion. So I ended up making a cash sale of that actually just this past September.
Okay, great stuff. So I think there's not many people that bought 2 businesses, built them up, and then sold them. It's quite a good pedigree. You're in a very unique group, I guess. And now you're looking for business opportunity, business investment. What kind of business are you looking for?
Yeah, so I've been on a little bit of a break after selling the tax practice. Last year with the pandemic and everything, it was hard for everybody. It was extra hard, I think, as a tax practice as well, with all the new regulations that were coming out and trying to keep track of those, for our clients and such. So, but, I love to talk to struggling business owners. I just want to sit down and help people as much as possible. I'm in a position now where it doesn't necessarily have to, have a fee involved. I just really love helping, especially within my own community. But right now I'm working with a couple of different groups. One group is working on a wellness roll-up to acquire massage therapy companies, acupuncture, possibly organic health products, organic soaps and things like that to form a large wellness group to take public. I'm working with another team that's building a financial services powerhouse group to also take public as well. And those are both in the United States, and the financial services, they're also building one in the UK. And then for my own acquisitions, I'm looking, for more bars and pizza places, and that neighborhood iconic place. Yeah.
Okay. So ideally, if people, investors or people listen to this, they could bring you those kind of deals, and you'd be open to doing some kind of joint venture, would you?
Yeah, certainly. Or even, if something as major as a joint venture, or something as, a 20-minute phone conversation to bounce some ideas off, I'd be open to all of that.
Okay, that sounds great. Well, I'm sure you'll get people calling you with the experience you've got already. So, any final words of wisdom for budding investors looking into getting into? Because you pointed out quite rightly some of the things that happen in the bar, and you really need to know that stuff going into it. You really, so to JV with someone who's been there, done it, and worn the T-shirt, as we say in the UK, is really important. So, so you're open to doing these joint ventures, is that right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Okay. And so, words of wisdom. That's what I was saying. What kind
Sure.
of words of wisdom would you offer budding investors?
So I would say, if you're in the job phase of life, have lots of different jobs and try lots of different things. But once you want to, get into the business arena as an owner, find something that you really enjoy and stick with it for a while. Give it time to succeed. I know a lot of people just, quit too early. Consider working just to learn, even for free. Like you said, there's just so much to know. And if you can go in and get a job, or even just help someone and learn that business for free before you commit to being the business owner. And then mostly, just go into every transaction hoping to give some type of value without expectation in return. And always consider buying over building a business. Why start from scratch when you can already, purchase something that has a good framework and you can build from there?
Yeah, I agree. Very much on the last one. Buying cash flow, consistent, regular cash flow is the way to go, I think. And we've kind of, I certainly have learnt that in later years, and it's the fast track to, business success, I think, really, because
Sure.
you're buying an established business that's got past that 5, maybe even 10-year hurdle, and you're investing in a safe bet. So brilliant. So excellent words of wisdom, Della. Thank you very much. I've really enjoyed listening to you today, and thanks for being a guest on the show. So how can people get hold of you, Della?
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on Clubhouse, or my email address is dellak@kirkmancpa.com. So feel free to reach out to me in any of those fashions.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sean.
You've been great. Thanks again.
Have a super day.
Will do. Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode with Della Kirkman. She's certainly doing great things in the retail space, and I'm sure we'll be hearing a lot more from her. So don't forget to subscribe below, hit that notifications bell, and you'll get the latest YouTube videos as they are released. And remember, you can connect with me on LinkedIn. Just send me a connection request. Now, the next episode of the Mad Podcast is with Giles Button. He's a UK entrepreneur, and he's got a couple of fascinating case studies to share with us. So I'll see you on the next episode. Bye for now.